Five Nights at Freddy's now has a movie. It has transcended its indie roots and become a cultural phenomenon in a way that few IPs, especially coming from the horror genre or video games, have ever achieved. FNaF is no longer just an indie horror game series or even a multi-million-dollar franchise. It is a generational zeitgeist, an idea that has captured the imagination of millions worldwide. Now with a movie, it can reach a wider audience than ever, and wider criticism too. Beloved by many and despised by many more, the FNaF movie is surprisingly divisive, and extraordinary Rotten Tomatoes scores aside, the sheer prevalence of responses to the FNaF movie, good or bad, bring into question more than just a review. What kind of a movie is this, in terms of tone and genre? Who is the target audience of the movie, fans or general audiences? And what does the movie mean for the future of the franchise and the fanbase following it? Join me as I deep dive into what makes the Five Nights at Freddy's movie so special. Greetings and welcome to Continuity Error. My name is Matt and oh boy, I am glad that we finally have the FNaF movie. 8 years! We've been waiting about 8 years for this film, through production issues, company changes, numerous script rewrites, the pandemic, strikes, and probably so much more. Scott Cawthon and his talented cast and crew were able to finally come together and make this thing a reality. Say what you will about the film, but kudos to Scott Cawthon for sticking through all of that and delivering after all this time without giving up. I cannot emphasize enough just how big of a moment this is for the fandom. Horror is kind of stigmatized, video game movie adaptations often have a bad rep, and FNaF is quite frankly hated by a lot of people, including communities of other horror enjoyers and gamers, and yet, here we are, with the movie smashing the box office despite an online release almost immediately after the theatrical one. It's a hit, whether you like it or not, and I bet that the cult following, the fan base of FNaF, is one of the biggest factors contributing to its success. See, for a lot of people this probably came out of nowhere, but I bet it might have been nostalgic for a significant number of people who hadn't really thought about FNaF since 2015, which was the last time it was anywhere near this popular. I mean, we're talking about the original FNaF mania here. But for the fans, it's been a slow going that ramped up for a few months before the release. And before getting into my analysis of everything, I want to talk about that history for context. I know most of you watching will probably know all of this already, but I want my videos to be accessible to everyone, regardless of how little they might know about the subject. So, timestamps are in the description if you'd like to skip ahead to a certain segment. Otherwise, let's just get into it. The way I see it, FNaF's been in limbo. What was once a unique and thriving franchise is now a problematic icon of mediocrity. Or is it? For the first 5 years or so, FNaF was an innocent, memorable indie hit that was just starting its journey beyond its roots by 2019. The biggest scandal associated it was probably just this guy for stealing art for YouTube videos, which had nothing to do with the official franchise. Now that the original series was complete, Scott Cawthon was ready to license FNaF out to new companies and begin the evolution of FNaF into something bigger. One notable event was the creation of the FNaF Projects Megathread in 2018, a list of upcoming multimedia releases for the FNaF franchise. This changed and evolved over time, but initially included everything from games to books to a movie. Remember this. From 2019 to 2021, the franchise slowed down on releases, with a well-received DLC for the new VR title, a mediocre mobile game, and a book series with stories of variable quality. It wasn't a bad time for FNaF, but the pace and type of content had changed significantly from the golden age. A lot of people were just waiting on that big upcoming 2020 game. Additionally, the movie was also undergoing rewrites, with production held back due to the virus. A complete script was confirmed in November 2020, but it would be years before we got more substantial news on it. After 2 major delays, however, we finally got to play the ambitious new game after controversies had already started. Scott Cawthon retired because of leaked political donations, posting an uncharacteristically hostile announcement on Reddit and virtually ghosting his community for the best part of 2 years. Despite a return to interacting with the community alongside the movie release, Cawthon has never addressed this, nor talked about the December 2021 release. I don't have time to get into it, but essentially this game's issues tore the fandom in half. I'm part of the half that basically quit FNaF. Mostly. Kind of, it's been on and off. Looking back now, it's shocking to think that as severe as the issues with the game impacted FNaF's reputation and audience, among other things, Steelwall's magnum opus was more symbolic of FNaF's deeper issues than an issue itself. The ruination of the FNaF lore seemed like the most devastating hit to the franchise ever, and yet that ended up being the most trivial thing to happen to FNaF in this time period, which I think just speaks volumes about how bad it really got. Back to back, Fazbear Fanverse Initiative developers, official FNaF book artists, and even MatPat were all cancelled over various controversies, all the while with barely an iota of acknowledgement or action from Scott Cawthon, who had completely disappeared. The seriousness of each issue individually would have dwarfed any fandom cancer FNaF had ever seen before, and for a year there was new drama at least once every 2 or 3 months. It was nuts. From late 2021 to early 2022, FNaF repeatedly faced shocking news revealing moral and even legal failures within the franchise's internal management. Trust and faith in the FNaF franchise was relentlessly being decimated by bad actors, while the head of the franchise presumably focused on taking care of his family and making the movie, but without leaving any kind of leadership behind to take his place, Scott Cawthon left FNaF in utter chaos. I'm not exactly sure what the state of the fanbase was from late 2022 to early 2023, since I've been almost completely absent for that period especially, but aside from a DLC and a new book series to tie into the latest game, I'm not aware of any FNaF releases in this time. It seems that, once again, the franchise was in limbo, like it was in 2020. But you know what they say about FNaF, it always
Nothing dies down here.
Eventually, a teaser for the FNaF movie finally released. Blumhouse was starting to make social media posts. After numerous delays, another big, ambitious project was finally on its way. Would history repeat itself? This was different though. A movie would be a completely new step for FNaF, unlike all of the recent releases. Unlike a game, it would be subject to a far wider mainstream audience outside the fanbase, making the reach of any previous media seem tiny in comparison, especially with relative fame like Matthew Lillard involved. This was also the final Megathread project. Out of every single item listed on the original 2018 plan for expanding the franchise, all except the movie had either released or been cancelled. However it turned out, the FNaF movie had to be a turning point for the franchise, and by extension, the fan base. This would be the epitome of FNaF, the most ambitious step of growth for the franchise, and the most widely known version of FNaF in the public imagination, second only to the original game. The movie inherently redefines FNaF, not only because it would be far more consumed than any of the books or games, not only because it's been more highly anticipated by fans than any other FNaF project, but also by nature. Cinema is a form of mass media, and this is FNaF's official entry into it. It has been made by the original creator, so whatever it is will be set in stone forever. So, was it worth the wait? Well, that's subjective opinion, but you know, everything I'm saying in this video is subjective opinion. And speaking of opinions, I should actually do a review of the FNaF movie itself. It's real, it's here, so let's stop talking about it hypothetically. It's time that I actually looked at the FNaF movie as a movie and gave my honest review. Five Nights at Freddy's 2023 is mid. It was worth the wait. I liked it more than I expected, but it's not a good movie. I'd give it a 6 out of 10, and aside from appreciating the soundtrack more, my opinion has not changed upon rewatching it, so maybe a 6.5, that's like 3 stars. Quite frankly, I think the audience Rotten Tomatoes score is wrong because it's offset by illiterate fans who only care about fan service. And the critics Rotten Tomatoes score is even worse because it's offset by critics who are close-minded and won't give FNaF a chance because of stigma or lack of interest or both. This movie is a perfect average of all things FNaF, so it had good, bad, and ugly. The best thing about the movie is, of course, Mike. Josh Hutcherson not only portrayed him with ethos and pathos, the script did him justice. In every scene, Mike acts realistically and is easily the most relatable character in the movie. Additionally, he undergoes a substantial conflict and hero's journey type of story fit for the main protagonist. I can see why this was called the Mike script. My next favourite character is, of course, Abs. Abby, who was brought to life by Piper Rubio, never ceases to be charming. She's the perfect foil for Mike, and to me their dynamic was the most valuable aspect of the entire movie. It's just so human and so beautiful. She's very clearly a child and is written and portrayed in that way, but she's never nauseating, she's never annoying or useless. Which is especially important for child actors and characters in any media. In general, I think all of the actors did their job brilliantly, from Elizabeth Lale's range of emotion as Vanessa to Michael P. Sullivan's comedic moments as Doug. I can't name every name, but credit is due to everyone who worked on the cinematography, set design, costumes, soundtrack, the Jim Henson Creature Shop for literally bringing the iconic animatronics to the real world, and of course Emma Tammy for her direction. There's just so much talent to praise in the finer aspects of movie making here, from the visually appealing camera angles and lighting to the details and references tastefully littered throughout the film, as well as that fantastic intro sequence and the real physical animatronics that are shockingly game accurate, by the way. Seriously, I was expecting full-on redesigns, something akin to FNaF Plus, not copy-pasting them from FNaF 1 into reality. Should I still talk about FNaF Plus, or is it time to pretend that never existed? Anyways, I genuinely think all these parts of the film are A or even S tier. So why'd I call it mediocre and give it a 6 out of 10? Sadly, although this movie had a strong start, it just gets worse as it progresses. The first 2 acts are mostly fine. Aunt Jane's motives aren't really explained properly, and the Map Pack cameo was a bit forced, let's be honest. But aside from that, it's really good. I adore all of the dream sequences. Vanessa is a bit of an exposition dump machine, but her scenes with Mike are usually great for intrigue or character development. I didn't mention it earlier, but I feel like I should mention Grant Feely. He really does a perfect job of portraying the vengeful ghost child spirit of Golden Freddy, or whatever his in-universe name is. I'm always really impressed with actors that young being able to perform to a standard this high. Like, well done, guys. But eventually we get to the Fortnite. Is this the worst scene in the movie? This is the worst scene in the movie. Just, where do I even start? This took me so out of the film, I'm not sure I got back in, you know? The tone clashes so much with the movie beforehand, and it destroys the immersion completely. Seeing the animatronics engaged in this goofy situation and doing the lying down in a circle thing like it's some kind of teenage romantic coming-of-age camping type beat was bad enough, but presenting it as a montage with upbeat music to boot? Really? Yet, these are the same animatronics that we're supposed to believe are capable of cold-blooded, brutal murder as we saw earlier in the film. Comparing this with the intro is like watching 2 completely different adaptations of FNaF. It's so bizarre, and it sadly demolishes any opportunity the animatronics had to be threatening or scary whatsoever for the rest of the film. This is without even mentioning that Vanessa just suddenly becomes a poorly written hypocrite out of nowhere. After the fort scene, she threatens to shoot Mike if he brings Abby back to Freddy's, after Vanessa herself encouraged Abby to play with the animatronics that is later revealed she knew were haunted and had corpses inside of them the whole time. What the It would have been so easy to fix this by just, like, cutting the scene or something. You could replace it with just some dialogue with Vanessa and Mike, because it barely contributes anything to the story or characters, and another scene achieves what this one was aiming for with much, much better execution earlier in the film. Remember that scene where Mike wakes up to hear Abby screaming, rushes out to confront the animatronics, and finds that Abby is cheerily playing with them while he panics about how dangerous they are? It shows, without telling, with much greater subtlety and levity, that the animatronics can behave like the kids haunting them, that they do have this dynamic of being friendly to kids but hostile to adults, and that actually there is a shred of humanity still within these souls. Plus, it gives Abby and Mike a character conflict, it helps kind of set up the finale of the movie, it does so much with so much less. It's incomprehensible to me that such phenomenal and atrocious scenes exist in the same movie, side by side, mere minutes apart. But here we are. Speaking of setting up the finale, the Golden Freddy scene is also littered with problems. We love you, Corey, and you were perfect. My god, this scene stinks of writing. This scene is like 2 minutes long and has more problems than like half the movie. Firstly, there's just a taxi waiting outside the Schmidt house. It's never explained why, it's just there for plot convenience. It's just at this place, at this time, so Corey can have his cameo and Abby can get to Freddy. It's literally, oh no, we need characters to go from point A to point B for plot reasons. How do we do it? Here's the most contrived solution possible. Secondly, who pays for the taxi? Abby's a kid, and Golden Freddy is Golden Freddy. No way he killed the taxi driver while Abby was with him, so what happened? Was Corey just too freaked out to insist on payment? Did he just decide not worth it and book it? Like, huh? Third, how and why does Golden Freddy even kill Aunt Jane? I also just want to mention how poor Jane was treated in this movie. Like, she just dies, it's never addressed or acknowledged, it's just a loose end that's forgotten completely by the end of the movie. When I saw Mike standing over Vanessa's hospital bed at the end, I was expecting the shot to pan onto Jane instead as a kind of like unexpected twist, and for them to have some kind of reconciliation, but no. No consequences or moral ambiguity, can't confuse the kids with realism. Fourth, how the hell does a 7-foot-tall animatronic fit inside a taxi like that? How? There's also just the logical inconsistencies of A, Golden Freddy being a physical animatronic that can teleport and transform into a ghost kid, B, Golden Freddy traveling in animatronic form rather than just as a kid, and C, Golden Freddy even being able to exist this far away from Freddy's, but okay, I'll concede all of that as game universe logic that doesn't apply to the movie, sure, but almost all of these problems could have been fixed with a very simple script change. The blonde kid contacts Abby in her dreams, same way he did with Mike. Abby then sneaks past Aunt Jane and walks to Freddy's, or if that's not close enough, pays for a taxi she finds with money stolen from Jane's purse. Easy. Done. This is only 2 specific scenes from the 3rd act of the movie, but I hope it highlights for you guys what I'm getting at here. The writing is really, really bad at times, and it's so frustrating because the writing is really, really good at other times. I'm not done though. Generally, the ending was rushed, but one specific issue stands out as a real fault with the ending. This was Scott Cawthon's last chance to make William Afton a decent character, and he failed. Now, Matthew Lillard is easily the best version of Purple Guy we've ever had, but the bar is really, really low. I mean, no disrespect to either him or PJ Hayward, I think both of them are charismatic and talented actors who did their best. My issue is purely with the writing, and that always goes back to Scott Cawthon. To be fair, I thought the Steve Raglan scenes were perfect. The dialogue was natural, the acting was sublime, but even Lillard can't save what an absolute train wreck William Afton was in the finale of the movie. It doesn't help that William had absolutely no presence for the majority of this movie due to a lack of screen time, or that his dialogue is horrendously cliche, but the worst thing is how all the potentially brilliant drama with him was rushed. His dialogue with Vanessa, the only character with a deeper personal connection to him, and thus major potential for rich character development, was cut short so fast that I didn't process that Vanessa was working with William the whole time on my first watch. Maybe it was the fort scene destroying my immersion, as I said before, but I literally didn't realize the movie's main twist until it was explained to me on my second viewing. And truthfully, I still don't get it. Like, how long has Vanessa known that William was the murderer? Has she actually helped him murder previous guards? How many? How long has this whole thing been going on? Weeks? Months? Years? Since Freddy's closed? Since the MCI? Since the 80s when she was a kid? Why didn't she betray William sooner if she understood that he was a very bad man? Does she know about his Steve Raglan alias? Is she even a real cop? There's just a whole history with these characters that is fundamental to their motives and their choices, but none of it is ever explained or explored, so it just creates massive plot holes. We just have to assume that every decision Vanessa and William made had a reason, which is simply contrived. It's not the audience's job to write the script for themselves, and relying on a sequel to solve the movie is a terrible creative decision, so there's no excuse. I could spend a whole video on this topic, but my point is that in this movie, William Afton is still a two-dimensional caricature of evil with no motive, inconsistent personality traits, and no real justification for anything he does. It's implied that maybe he's nostalgic at one point, but like, that's it, that's not enough. This is not good enough for the main antagonist of the franchise, and the catalyst for literally everything that ever happened in the FNaF story. He also utters the cringiest line in the movie, literally sounding like he's been written by a fan. This reference is pointless, it doesn't make sense in context, and he chooses death by Springlocks willingly? What? Anyways, I hope that helped you understand my take on the FNaF movie. It really is an S-tier movie, hampered by F-tier trash, almost exclusively in the writing. But, unfortunately, the writing is the core of the movie, since everything else exists to translate the script into the film, so it kind of evens out to a mediocre C for me. There's only one thing uglier than the lost potential of William, though. tonal clash. I mentioned this earlier with the fort scene, which just happens to be the most egregious example, but this isn't a problem within the movie. I find it symbolic of FNaF as a whole. See, the tone and ideas of the movie draw from everything. Games and books, old and new. It has the darkness of FNaF 1, but the campiness of Security Breach. It has the edge of Fazbear Frights, but the goofiness of the novels, and trying to be a serious horror story while also pandering to fans and younger viewers just holds back the film's full potential. It's a perfect average of all things FNaF. Good, bad, and ugly. If this movie chose one path and stuck to it consistently, it would be so much better. If FNaF gave in to becoming cheesy crap and went the Willy's Wonderland route, fine, I ain't got much else to lose. At least then it would be a so bad it's good type of deal, maybe a 7 out of 10. Consistent and fun, ironically. But if it stuck the landing with the ending and it didn't hold back from being an R-rated story with more depth and resonance for all the characters, it really could have been at least an A-tier movie with just a few specific script changes. Alright, now that the discussions about the context and the content are out of the way, let's talk about the meta. With everything I've said in mind, let's go back to those questions I asked in the intro. Firstly, what is the genre and tone of the movie trying to be? We've established that it's inconsistent, seeming to go for eerie dread and atmospheric mystery at times, but becoming an absurdly cartoonish adventure at other times. Overall, is it just a weird clash of both? Here's a better question. Is this movie just for fans or for wider audiences? Because the way I see it, there's issues for both types of viewers. For fans, virtually every element of the story just remixed existing beats from the games and books, so the movie was very predictable, especially towards the end. For non-fans, however, the lore and fan service permeating the story makes the movie confusing. I've seen long-time fans confused about whether this was Freddy or Golden Freddy, so imagine how lost people are who don't even know who Golden Freddy must be. In fairness, a lot of the fan service and lore in the movie is very much in the background, not affecting the plot, and Mike's characterization is original to this film. Perhaps my premise here is too simplistic, too binary, but the way I understand it, when you watch this movie, you either know FNaF or you don't. Maybe it's more of a spectrum, since within the groupings of fans and non-fans there are individuals with differing amounts of knowledge on the franchise. I'm sure the truth is that the movie is for both types of audiences, fans and non-fans, but I think my point still stands. Given the Rotten Tomatoes scores and the tonal clash of the movie as discussed earlier, I think it's fair to say that this film suffers from trying to appeal to everybody. Its strengths are watered down because it's being pulled apart in opposite directions, and where I come from we have a saying, if you try and appeal to everybody, you appeal to nobody. Parts of this movie feel geared towards younger audiences and fans, but parts of it appeal more to horror enjoyers and non-fans, which are two very different audiences, and thus the plot's affected negatively. These inconsistencies damage immersion, enjoyment, and meaning in fiction, and if that's not the point of the FNaF movie, then I don't know what is. Oh my, you know what? All of this cycles back around to what I said in my other video, Indie Mascot Horror is Undead. Because this is just the kid-friendly horror debate all over again, the heart of FNAF's unresolved identity crisis. For those of you who didn't watch that video, don't blame me, it's a long one. One thing I concluded was that because of Steel Wars games, the front and center of, FNAF content in this era, FNAF has generally been suffering from the exact same tonal clash that the movie has been on its own that we've just been talking about. I don't want to repeat that video, but it has a bearing on my final point of discussion today. Problematic icon of mediocrity might not be accurate to FNAF now, but it's not exactly in its prime anymore. Is FNAF just going to keep drifting along? Is the IP getting stale? Does it need a break? Maybe. But I also can't help but think what good it would do to experiment. Imagine what FNAF could do if it was licensed out to a wider variety of game developers and writers in different genres and mediums. But that won't happen, because none of the actual issues the franchise has been harboring since the late 2010s have actually been resolved. There's no innovation on the horizon in terms of content either. Besides, even if we've got a renaissance of new projects, the stuff that's front and center, Steel War games and the movie, both suffer from the kid-friendly horror tonal clash, and it's not like some side project will redefine the franchise or resolve any of its internal problems. Hell, even if we got all of these, 9 times out of 10, it might just be a failure of tonal clash. And is that really worth it for the 1 out of 10 good project? It's just another Steel Wall game, another short story volume, teasers for Fazbear Fanverse games that are still years away, and what, more movies? If I'm being honest, I expect them to follow the novel trilogy and become more absurd and contrived, because I don't expect Scott Cawthon to improve his writing or resolve FNAF's identity crisis on any front. Truth is, I don't know what the future holds, beyond what is obviously already known. All I know is that Scott Cawthon never retired and still holds the rights to FNaF, so everything is up to him. I want to like FNaF, I really do. I want to be involved. If I was truly capable of cutting it cleanly out of my life, I would have already done so years ago, but I can't because I still love the old FNaF. I still have FNaF content I want to make. For myself, for you, like this. I still have social commitments to the fandom, friends and communities that I refuse to abandon, and I was still waiting on the movie. Now that the movie's here, I'm still indecisive. It wasn't good enough to restore my confidence and bring me back to fully committing to the franchise, but it wasn't bad enough to make me decisively quit all engagement with FNaF, so I'm just stuck in this awkward, in-between, arm's-length relationship with it. Is it simply too soon to say if this is the meaningful turning point that I've speculated it to be? There is 2024. Next year, FNaF turns 10 years old, and I'm not going to miss the decade anniversary for the world. Scott Cawthon will surely do something special for it, and I will be too. So, at the very least, I'm curious to just see what happens. Until then, I guess I'll keep doing what I'm doing. And even after the 10-year anniversary, FNaF is unlikely to be exempt from the interesting topics I can make videos on. Maybe this is the future now. Maybe, for the rest of my life, it's just going to be a more distant relationship, and that's okay. Times change. People change. FNaF changes. So... Now, if you've made it to this point in the video, you must have enjoyed it, so please leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and share this with your friends. All the support is very much appreciated. Check the links in the description. We've got a Discord server, and, you know, you might be interested in all the other stuff down there. I wouldn't normally do this, and I know this isn't a vlog, but I did want to stop for a moment to say, I'm really close to ad revenue monetization. If you guys could just share this to bump up that subscription up to 1,000... the possibilities for this channel are just unlocked, and then there's more potential for what we can do in future. This feels like an apt opportunity to just briefly mention as well. Thank you. Seriously. For all the likes, or the subscribes, or the shares, I really appreciate you guys helping these videos reach more people who are interested in them and engaging with them and just helping the channel succeed and allow me to make more of what I love doing here. But also, thank you so much for the comments. For the whole, 2 years, or however long it is we've been doing this now, it's been so rewarding to have so many engaging and meaningful conversations with all you like-minded people. I really, really appreciate it, so thank you. But anyways, that's the end of the video. Subscribe and speculate. What do you think will happen with FNaF after the movie trilogy is complete?